All right, welcome to the Modern Nurse Podcast. My name's Emily Knife, and I am your host today. And we are so excited. We're going to nerd out today. I have Matt Harless here. He's a 20-year nurse, has been at service for nursing a very long time, has done multiple different jobs in nursing, but we're going to nerd it out today on some quantum physics, some laws of the universe, stuff that we typically don't talk about in nursing, but it is so important in regard to nursing and Maslow's hierarchy and all of these things that just kind of get pushed aside. So we're going to dive into that today. So welcome, Matt, to the Modern Earth
Well,
podcast.
thank you so much for having me. I was really excited to do this.
Yes, I'm so excited. So let's go ahead and talk about let's just dive in. So what do you want to talk about first? I'll
Okay,
open it up to you.
your video broke up.
Oh, I know. It's in and out. It will be okay. We'll fix it on the back end.
So the way I start out, I'll tell everybody, I have a master's degree in theology and my focus was apologetics. So avid researcher. And when I start a thought, it's like string theory and I follow the evidence wherever it takes me. So when I started, the study of God, we got quickly into the epistemological realities of the universe, and that has to do with the combination of what we know in the universe. So we know ourselves, we know matter, and we know energy. And most people stop there with the dichotomy, is what they call it. But I believe in the third element, which is spiritual, which is that realm beyond just electrical that has some influence over our world. So matter, energy, and spirit. And I believe that those realities come true, especially in the hospital setting. Matter is definitely the biological processes in which we're having to intervene. And if everything was a cut and dry biological experiment, it'd be wonderful. I mean, that's why I love surgery. You cut the cancer out and they get better. But a lot of times we have to deal with energy. And I think like that's one of the elements that we really struggle with. The brain is probably the most intelligent supercomputer, and we still can't understand it because the actions on an axon that intervenes with the neuron are so complicated and they happen so fast that how do we dissect it and even understand it? The third level is even deeper, and that has to do with our spiritual elements. When you look at outcomes, and I'm famously telling people I don't own outcomes, but when you do a macro establishment of what's happened over the time, you'll find that outcomes are exceedingly greater for people that have that spiritual component. So that's kind of where I start.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I think that's so interesting because in nursing, like the spiritual aspect, I worked as a hospice nurse for a while and, I did see souls rise out of people. And, to talk about that amongst other nurses, though, I felt almost like judged or like I was crazy, like they were going to send me the psych ward. But I
Yeah,
think that aspect that we don't talk about because it's something unknown. And so more likely than ever, people are going to talk about things that they're comfortable with, right? And that's why
right.
nursing has stayed the same for a very long time because we don't want to get uncomfortable. So yeah, we're getting uncomfortable today, nurses. So keep listening because we're going to talk about some really cool stuff. So going back to the energy concept, how I love talking about energy because I always give the example if you go to a funeral, well, a traditional American funeral is the casket, church, what have you. It's very depressing. You're all in black, everybody's crying, and it's like, ugh. But if you go to another country, it's like a celebration of life where the energy is really high and you can feel it. It's like going to a wedding.
Yeah.
And so, how do you think we can bring this energetic concept into nursing? How do you think we could do that, Matt? Because I think it's a really important piece, and nurses have to understand their own energy because that transfers, right, to other people and patients.
If you've ever done any time in hospice, I think you have that understanding that patients hold on for that final visit. There's a grandbaby that's not been born, and there's no scientific reason why they're alive. But once the baby's born, once they meet the baby, once the baby leaves the room, then they pass on. The beautiful thing about having somebody in a chronic illness or a cancer that they've had for years, every family member has had their chance to say their piece and to tell the family member how much they've loved them, share experiences. And it's like the people, the patients that are in those long-term experiences have this overwhelming sense of peace where they're like, I've lived a good life. Every single one of my children love me. They know where I'm going. Those kinds of conversations occur. And that celebration of life happens sometimes at the bedside. And you have this wonderful opportunity. They used to call nurses angels of mercy. And
Yeah.
you get to hear some of those stories, but you also get to help draw out those stories. And
Yeah.
you bring that, to the patient. You can talk about, even though the patient's agonal breathing and they get like a breath every minute or two,
Yeah.
you can be like, that grandbaby's coming today. They're going to do a C-section. And whether they ever respond to you or not, I mean, you don't have to say these things. Like I say that all the time. People can do a 12-hour shift and do the bare minimum and go home. And great. But I mean, if you really want to experience the joy of sharing a passion, what I call a calling, you have that opportunity as a nurse. And money is great. Recognition is wonderful, but there's a real spiritual opportunity that you have if you just take it. And I mean, you can't pay people enough to do those kinds of things. And to be in that position, like, I get there's so much moral injury, there's so much burnout, things like that. And I think it's because people are not focused on the deeper sense of reality that we have to bring to people in distress.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And you make so many good points. And I want to fall back on the power of being present with a patient in regard to the spiritual aspect. So before we dropped on this podcast, we were talking about the connection, like the power of prayer, the power of having the same mindset, and how that can help people heal faster, right? Like in even
right.
having somebody say, like, if somebody has a wound, and if you had that person consistently say, like, I'm sick, I'm not healing, I'm not getting any better, they're probably not going to get better. But if you have somebody, and there's been so much research around this, and there's so many great articles out there. But I think the most prevalent one to me is when people join at churches and there's like hundreds of people praying for somebody, and the
Yeah.
person comes out like healed. It's
Yeah.
pretty like, so
So
like, how do you, yeah, go ahead.
this is great because the thing that
Yeah.
I tell people, they'll have a visitor and I'll have to get vitals, and you have to have that awkward conversation for while somebody's here. And I'm like, well, and they're like, well, this is Sarah. She's in my Bible study group. And I'll say, well, the best thing about being in the hospital is you find out who the people are that love you, because
Mhm.
nobody wants to come to the hospital. Like,
Right.
she obviously cares deeply or she wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
But the reverse of that is when you see people that have no visitors, you just kind of wonder what happened. And there's a lot of people that live pretty shitty lives and they realize how shitty they were to everyone around them
Yeah.
when nobody comes. And, you know, sometimes you got to hold space for them because they're going to be like, yeah, I wasn't a good person. And they're
Yeah.
just like, yeah, but now
Yeah.
you can change that. Like you've got what you've got left. You got to do the best with what you have.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
And
my,
that's, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
so one of the things I do teach everyone that I can't get to is the most important thing you can do as a nurse is know exactly who your patient is and know exactly where they are. You can hand them a pill and you can say, here's some Xanax, this will help your anxiety, which may or may not help. But you can also know your patient and say, and throw some energy their way and say, your life is good because, okay, your life sucks, you can make it better because. and
Yeah.
and I feel like, um you know that's easy to do. Like, that's
Yeah.
not we're not a lot of the stuff I talk about is not is not, rocket science as much as it is just, trying to make that person's life just one step better.
Yeah.
I feel like if you want to get into quantum physics, there's the law of entropy that just says that everything is going from this state that it's in to a more disorganized pattern.
Yeah.
And what happens in the body is like every 7 years we replicate our cells. Every cell in the body replaces itself every 7 years. And that copy form is usually not 100% of what the original form was. And there's no process in health that's ever going to regenerate that back to what it is. So
Right.
people don't realize when you talk about healthy lifestyle, healthy eating, diet patterns, I mean, the 7 years that you're living now is going to affect the 7 years coming up. And
Wow.
if you don't teach somebody that lifespan cycle, like
Yeah.
they don't always realize, oh, so the best I'm ever going to be is right now. Like,
Hmm.
the best you're ever going to be is right now. And the only thing that you can do right now is try to make that next 7 years as best as possible.
Yeah. Wow. That's
Yeah.
powerful. That's very powerful, right? I mean, that's healthcare. That's the change of healthcare right there. Is
Yeah.
prevent it. It's prevention. I mean, like that is such a powerful concept. You're the 7 years that you just lived is now the 7 years you're having.
Yes.
That's kind of a fuckery.
I, I love ice cream. I'm destroying my body. I
Uh,
like alcohol.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't drink it every day, but when I do, I deal with alcoholics all the time. I feel
Yeah.
for them because it's a
Yeah.
disease. And I make a point for myself. Okay. This is Matt
Yeah.
Harless 101. I go months without drinking it because I know I love it. But it's like, I don't want a chemical to dictate my life.
Yeah.
Right. So as much as I know I enjoy it, I make a point to abstain at points, on purpose,
Yeah.
just so that it doesn't control me. And I
Wow.
don't know, like sugar. Sugar is one of the most addictive chemicals, and I got to be transparent, honest, which is one of the steps in the Harless method. Is like
Yeah.
I have tried so many times in my life to put down the sugar, and it's like
Yeah.
I'm like a cocaine addict when it comes to sugar, and
Yeah.
I just suck at it. And I said something on a social media post about, we should not be going running to pills and surgery. We should be looking at
Right.
lifestyle alternatives. And somebody was like, that your 250-pound self shouldn't be telling us anything. And I'm like, well,
Oh my God.
if anything, and of course, fat shaming on the internet happens, right?
Right. Right.
But if anything, I think it doesn't. We have this concept that you have to be finished with your journey before you can
Yeah.
say anything to around you.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I was in college and I was on an exercise weight loss program, and a gentleman weighed 500 pounds, and he started to tell me how to eat, and I was very kind of offended by it.
Sure.
But it's like he's telling me what he's struggling with, and it's like the message is I'm one poor beggar just telling another beggar where to get food. And
Mm.
as much as I've learned, as much as I've gained, it's like, here's a concept, let's do it.
Yeah.
Here's something I think would work. Yeah, I wished I had done it 14 years ago so that my self today would be better. But
Yeah.
it's like in the value of age is experience.
Yeah.
And people look back on their lives, and through contemplation they have regrets for things that they wish they had done. And if we
Yeah.
don't learn to extract data from that experience from others, then we're going to end up in the exact same boat later on. So I always heard that the an unexamined life is probably the most worthless life.
Mm.
How many people go
Yes.
through life just never thinking about these things?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a very unrich life. Like, how do people not think? I don't know. I always love jamming out on this stuff, but there are some people that I've met through the hospice journey, and have had patients. They're just like, nah. And I'm just like, what? Like, you're 98. How did you not? Like, oh my God. And I think for me, it kind of falls back on I'm like, I don't know how many years it's been now. I've like a 30-year suicide ideation survivor, right? Like I don't, and the power of the mind, and we'll talk about that, has gotten me out. I don't have those thoughts anymore because I know if I do have a thought, it's like, oh, my nervous system is just overwhelmed. Like I don't need to
Yeah.
take it next level. It's just like the red light's on, the blue light special at Walmart, Kmart, wherever is on, and I need to pay attention because my nervous system is like, hey, shit's about to break down, like you need to pay attention. So now when I have that, I kind of laugh at myself and I'm like, oh, Emily, you're just going back to neural pathways that you're rebuilding, right? And that's the power of the mind. And I think kind of just going back to, you know, living this life. So now all I want to do is live because I've been so close to death so many times. I'm like, fuck that noise. I don't want to do that anymore. Like I'd rather be, talk to cool people, be enriched, and like live a really cool life and drink a lot of sweet tea. I also am a sugar addict, and it's hard as fuck to get off of that stuff, right? Like it's so hard. And
I know.
oh my God, I don't know. I don't know what the cure is for that, but there is literally sugar in everything. So it's like, am I just gonna like chew on spinach? I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen, but
Well, and I have I call it an algorithm, but I have a like a patent on the self-improvement process, right?
yeah.
None of it's earth shattering. One of my best friends was like, this Matt, this isn't nothing. Like, and I'm like, well, you haven't done it. You got to realize working on yourself is probably the most difficult thing you can ever do. To actually improve who you are as a person is probably the most difficult thing. And to have a sense of what I call transparent honesty in yourself means that you have to understand that even your perception of you might be wrong. And you've got to, when I talk about assessment, like anybody can just look at their self and say, I feel good today, so I'm all right. But it's also, you can also, there's social cues. And you see that in autism. When you have to teach an autistic child how to interpret social cues, you start getting down to some of the basics.
Yeah.
When somebody sees you, do they smile? You
Yeah.
know, when
Yeah.
somebody sees you, are they looking to give you an embrace? Does somebody see you and automatically look the other way and want to walk away from you?
Right. Right.
I mean, you start to recognize, oh, wait, maybe I'm not the most interesting person in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe this sense of narcissism that's running rampant is like, maybe people don't care about you. And the people that do care about you are using you. When
Yeah.
you understand that, maybe your nurse manager or that doctor that loves you, he loves you because he's asking you, what should I do with my patient today? And you're blurting out everything because you've actually critically thought. And then he didn't have to read the chart to understand what was going on. He just did what you said.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't realize the subtleties in that.
Yeah.
And I'd be honest, there as much as there's incompetent nurses, and that's one of the things is I tell nursing students before they take the NCLEX, like if you ever have anxiety about taking the NCLEX, think about the dumbest nurse you ever met because they passed. They passed.
Yes.
And it's no
Yes.
different. It's no different than
Yep.
doctor. You
Absolutely.
know?
Yes. Absolutely.
And I think we have to come to this sense of team.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people see nurses as the assistants for physicians. And I think
Absolutely.
there's nurses that think they're telling the doctors what to do too. But I mean, my favorite relationships with physicians are more interdisciplinary. The
Yeah.
doctor will come and say, I've read this, or what do you think about this? And you can tell they know the patient, but they're
Yeah.
saying like, what have you seen? Because we spend 12 hours, they spend 10 minutes.
Right.
They're looking for the subtleties and they're looking for the nuance. And if you can tell them succinctly what's actually happening with your patient, there's gold in that interaction.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
gotta tell you, in my career, code blues are pretty low.
Yeah.
If you learn the early stages of a medical crisis, you intervene
Yeah.
6 hours before the code would have been called. But if you're just walking around doing the bare minimum, you're going to have 6 code blues in a week.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of new grads that have a lot of codes, and I struggle because I want to understand what they were thinking 4 hours ago.
Yeah.
I looked at their chart, I could be like, you knew the white count was 30. Like
Right.
you knew the increase in struggle for breathing. And then you find that they have a pulmonary embolism
Mhm.
and you're scared. Like there's no intervention.
Yeah.
When a pulmonary embolism moves, it kills
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So as you are that close to a patient death when
Yeah.
you find one, and it's critical. And if you're not listening to the lung sounds, and you're not looking at your labs, and you're not paying attention to what the patient looks like,
Right.
those are three easy signs. And it's like, get a CT, be negative, be wrong,
Yeah.
but good God, do something.
Yeah. 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 And I wonder if that comes back to just like the belittling in nursing school more and more than ever. Not fulfilling kind of that student nurse is like, hey, you have dreams and awesome innovations, and we want to support you and we want to hear your voice. Rather, it's
Right.
kind of crushed. And I even see that amongst coworkers in hospitals. Like one nurse has this awesome innovation to solve a problem on the floor, but the charge nurse is like, well, did you research that? Is there several evidence-based research? It's just like,
Where's the
what?
best practice? All, yeah, I get the pushback of, well, that's not best practice. And you know what I tell them? I said it's not best practice yet.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm like, you know,
yeah.
it's because nobody's done it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like how new shit happens. Like that again is not rocket science. It's like that's how we bring stuff into the world, right? It's like
I think I
somebody has
don't
an
think
idea.
I don't think people are practitioners anymore. There's
Yeah,
so many algorithms. There's so many best practices. There's
yeah,
just so many checklists that we have to do, and it's like they're well intentioned, but we've
right.
we've also kind of lost the fact that every human being coming into a hospital is unique.
Yeah,
This cookie cutter approach to healthcare is not going to work. I mean,
right.
it's the precursor for AI and automation, but
Yeah,
how many people are going to die? And if we're going to extrapolate data and have an actuarial decide who is going to live and who's going to die, I mean, we're no different than the insurance companies. It's
yeah,
going to it's going to create this scientific fact that we know that now that you've been diagnosed with diabetes and heart disease, you're going to die in 21.7 years, and we're going to provide interventions just to the point of your death.
yeah,
And then if you live past that, you're screwed.
yeah, yeah,
What happened to the outliers? I mean,
yeah,
every nurse took probability, didn't you?
yeah,
When you
yeah,
realize when you're past two standard deviations of a normative uh, behavior, we don't understand why you're outside that line,
yeah, yeah.
and yet it happens every day.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, that it does. It happens every day. And every single nurse has, I think, have gone through that situation. And yeah, so let's come back to some more quantum physics and theory here. So what I know you spoke about we were talking about staff, environment, and self. And I think it's important to bring like the energetics in frequency and universal laws because I think, like, I believe Florence Nightingale really kind of touched that a little bit with opening the windows. Like, if you come into a room and there's a lot of people, for instance, if you walk into like a music festival, there's lots of energy. Like, I almost can feel like the atoms like bombarding. It's very bizarre. It might be like a neurospicy situation.
Yeah,
Um, but I can feel that energy to the point where, sometimes I'm in those places and I have to go take a nap because I've just been so depleted. But now I'm pretty good at like understanding energetic concepts and blocking energy and exchanging energies, but it's all energy, which
right.
is so freaking cool.
So
So,
you bring up this nature.
yeah,
Florence Nightingale wanted the windows open because she wanted us to experience nature.
yeah,
And think about the hospital environment, that there's a definite separation between the hospital. And I started thinking about this because when we do when we have a COVID room or a airborne precautions
Yeah.
room, we're ventilating the um, internal environment outside.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
all that. That's what a negative pressure room does.
Yeah.
But we don't have any rooms that are piping in natural air. You
Yeah.
know, and it brings me to a very deep concept. I hope you're ready because
Yeah. Let's do it.
this is it. This is what I am most excited about. And we talk about the laws of dissipative systems and dissipated structures. Okay, so a dissipated system, the best explanation I have is you think about a tornado or a hurricane, and I think that's probably the best analogy. So you have high pressure and low pressure that mix, and it pulls all of these molecules into a vortex.
Hmm.
So when a tornado or a hurricane is seen, it's crossing a plane. It's going east or west. It's probably going east to west most of the time, but it's a complete path of destruction, right?
Yeah.
Do you know where there's no destruction?
No.
In the eye.
Yes.
Have you ever
Interesting.
wondered why?
Yeah. What is it, like a negative pressure situation? What is it?
It's where the system is at its purest, and
Wow.
there's no matter that's been drawn in, and it does it's not exactly a state of equilibrium because
Okay.
equilibrium is a consistent state, and once you reach equilibrium, you don't come out of it.
Right.
Here's what's fascinating. A dissipative um, and I may have said it wrong. I have to look at my states. A a dissipative structure is a tornado. A dissipative system doesn't exist on the planet. Okay,
Mhm.
dissipative systems are out in the nebula of our
Yeah.
galaxy, right?
Yeah.
So think about a tornado that's not on a linear plane. Okay,
Yeah.
you still have the vortex, you still have the struggle, but you don't have gravity. So what they're talking about is it's in an open system. Now you have chaos
Mhm.
in a dissipative system until it reaches a system that allows it to create to infuse energy into that dissipative system.
Right.
And what it does is it pulls into a force of chaos, right?
Yeah.
It throws everything out of balance temporarily. And do you know what the end result is?
No.
Equilibrium.
Mm.
So it takes
Mm.
this chaotic structure that's passing through space in the
Yeah.
vacuum of nothing, and it's chaos. And then it finds just the right environment, just the right, particles.
Yeah.
It makes it worse temporarily until it fixes itself.
Yeah.
And
Wow. Yeah.
difference between the two is whether it's in an open or a closed system. So when you
Mm.
bring up North Florence Nightingale and Windows, hospital systems are closed.
Yes.
And
Yes.
when you think about the politics inside of a hospital system, the fact that
Mhm.
price transparency is an elusive debate, that system is closed. When
Yeah.
you think about management making decisions months and years ahead of time that are going to, distract nurses and doctors from actually providing quality patient care, we're talking about a closed
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
When we talk about executives maximizing profits to levels that have never been seen before in those
Right.
healthcare markets, we're talking about a closed system because we don't find out that United Healthcare is making $9 billion in 90, or was it $6 billion in 90 days until
Yeah.
after they've made it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If they were
Yeah.
transparent and honest about it up front, you know, we'd know about it. United
Yeah.
Healthcare, I saw today, their denial rates are 32%.
32%.
That was a
That's horrible. Ooh.
Kaiser Permanente. Their denial rates are 7. Yeah.
That's mind blowing.
Once we start
32%.
we started if things were more open. Mark
Yeah.
was on a podcast, and he was talking about who do you think takes the brunt of the responsibility when a patient comes into the hospital?
Right.
You realize the hospital does.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
hospitals have become like the default for
Yeah.
I forget exactly what he calls it. I'm not the best at business, but it's like the default rates for somebody coming into the hospital are some of the lowest, and they assume this debt risk because of an EMTALA law. And what people realize, if you ever worked in the hospital, we talk about EMTALA all the time. EMTALA
Mhm.
was a law the federal government put in place, and then immediately, within like 21 months of instilling that, they pulled all the funding and all the support behind the law. But because it is a federal law, every hospital is required to follow it.
Wow.
That's the law that requires hospitals to accept you as a patient, regardless of your insurance,
Mhm.
regardless of your ability to pay. You will get medical treatment.
Yeah.
There's no teeth behind it. So
Yeah.
what it is when you think about these laws of these dissipated systems, everything's
Right.
closed. No one
Yep.
knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Do you realize if you don't use your insurance, right, and you have a test you have to do, say an MRI, and you
Hmm.
go to the hospital and you say, I don't have insurance, I'm just going to pay cash. They're going to charge, a hospital is going to probably charge you $1,500. But
Yeah.
if you go to a separate standalone MRI facility, you're going to have that same test read probably by the same doctor or
Yeah.
just as qualified. You're going to pay $600.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is your insurance company, that Blue Cross Blue Shield that you pay every year
Mhm.
confidently, because you don't have any choice because it's coming from your employer, you don't have a choice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They negotiate with that health insurance company. That MRI is going to be billed for $3,000.
Yeah.
So guess who's subsidizing that MRI from that patient that walks in the MR in the ER and is following the EMTALA law? You who
Yeah.
have private insurance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
And
that whole mess, that whole self-pay, that whole mess. I actually got an MRI for, yeah, it was like $600, but the ER, it was like 17,000 or something. It was crazy.
so we live in a free market
Yeah.
economy, and part of a free market economy is the open, honest integrity of what's going on, the ability to choose where you want to go. Because,
Yeah.
okay, nobody cares if seven different MRI company is offering 500, 2,000, 7,000. If I have the choice of where to go and I have the choice of who's going to pay for it, I'm always going to choose the $500 one.
Right.
But because our
Absolutely.
employers have limited our ability to buy one insurance program, you're stuck with that $3,000 MRI and you're
Right.
just fucked.
Yeah.
And you have to not use your insurance to get the $500 or $600 one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
How do you feel? Go ahead. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I just, as much as we've allowed our system to be shut down, we need to open it up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
choose which MRI I want to go to.
Yeah. Yeah. And choose what route of health I want to deal with. Like instead of pills, 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 like let's get some other insurance approved. I don't even want to be insurance approved, to be honest. I was talking to another nurse and she was talking about creating like a utility system.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like every month, you pay a certain amount because there's some people that are super healthy. Like for instance, I don't pay health. I'm not employed by anybody. I'm self-employed. So I have a self-pay insurance, but then I also have this like cumulative pot insurance. So if something drastic does happen to me, like cancer or something
Yeah.
like that, God forbid, I can still reach into that pot as long as I get an itemized bill from my provider or whoever I go see, send it into them, and then they negotiate using that giant fundage pot, which I think is such a cool concept.
I think
Because
the healthcare utility people are probably the smartest.
yeah,
Well, I've researched, and I know all of them, and I've talked to them individually. I just think that our current healthcare system is going to have to completely fail, which I
yeah,
think it will. I
yeah.
think it will.
Dismantle for sure. Yeah,
It'll be completely dismantled, and the
yeah,
rebirth of our next healthcare system is going to have to. I think those people are going to be there to pick up the pieces after what we have falls.
yeah,
Now, what we can do with what we have now is try to prolong it or to radically change it. And I think there are people that are trying to do that. And I think as long as our healthcare system is in place, that's really kind of where we need to be today.
Yeah.
I support like the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement. I think nursing needs to be rated as a STEM. And like what's coming, I think in the next year is there going to be a massive proliferation in David Divel's approach, the 3D um,
Yeah.
uh,
The healthcare
healthcare
plan.
management. And I pay attention to trends quite a bit. And sadly, I'm right a lot.
Yeah.
A
I
year
second
from
that
now,
notion.
in the Bible, prophets were stoned if what they said didn't come true. So a year from now, I really hope I'm not being stoned. But I try not to say something that I don't believe in.
Yeah. 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 Well, you're a visionary, Matt. So that is just the natural part of being a visionary. Like it's interesting. I'm really into trends as well. Yeah, I think 2025 is going to be a very interesting year for things that are coming in, especially like the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement. We have Melissa Mills on the Modern Nurse
Oh
podcast,
yeah,
and at Modern Nurse Fest. She's amazing. And so, yeah, all these awesome nurses are coming together. So I just want to kind of talk about and finish up with what you are doing, Nursing 101, and just talk about that because I think it's important the mission that you're doing with that. And I know you're so low key about it, but I want to get this out here, Matt, because it's really important work what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about your Nursing 101 that you get into.
I've personally been on a journey. I worked for a terrible healthcare system during COVID, and
Yeah,
I was burnt out. I dealt with all this moral injury. I've always been the guy that's done a lot of orientation and training, mentoring of nursing students, and I love nursing students. But I was so burnt out that I kind of stopped. And at one point, I was just like, I don't want to even, I don't want to prepare the next generation because I don't like what's coming.
yeah,
I'm still not happy, but I think what's missing is nursing 101. I
yeah,
think nursing schools are producing more graduates than ever, and I think they're lowering the bar for nurses, and I think it's sad.
yeah,
Hospitals have created these intern programs, and they're trying to bridge the gap, but even hospitals are limited in what they're saying for
right.
these students. And I'm not affiliated with anybody. So when I never publish the hospital I work for till after I leave. I try not to talk about my current hospital unless it's a positive thing. Because if you know me, you know where I work, and you're going to see it. But nursing 101 is the information that you're not going to get nursing school or from your hospital. We're going to go through the nursing process. We're going to talk about assessment. And I always tell everybody assessment is way beyond the head to toe.
Mm,
You've got to learn to assess yourself. That's also the first step in the Harless method of problem solving. We talk about the self, and it's so important that you understand who you are, your strengths and your weaknesses, how to build on your weaknesses through your strengths, those kinds of things, and just how you can identify yourself with some transparent honesty. We go through 6 different golden nuggets. I call them golden nuggets because this is wisdom that was passed down from previous generations of nurses. This isn't like Matt's idea of what smart is.
right.
And I never share all 6 of them publicly. But if you take the course, you're going to learn all 6 of these. And these are truths that are going to help you every day in life as a person, as an employee, as a nurse, and they're gonna be transformative in who you are. We talk about the Maslow's hierarchy of need, and we structure it in such a way that you understand what level of Maslow your patient is in, so that you can customize your education, your interventions, and your planning so they really can maximize benefit out of your care. And we finish up with some reflection on what you want to do next and how you want to reach those lofty goals that you set for yourself. And I'll tell you, the people that have gone through the program, I've got some nurse executives that I am so proud of, some nurse practitioners who are competent in their practice that I would go to them before I'd see some doctors.
Wow.
And just some geniuses that I've had the privilege of mentoring, and they now mentor me because we got them to this place that they're just so beyond. Not only that, but I mean, just the countless bedside nurses who are now providing care in a much more restorative, purposeful way. Like, I would love to see a movement develop out of this, but I keep it small because I know it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
But I've got 5 openings right now at teachrn.com, and we're going to start there. And if those 5 people love it as much as everyone else did, I'll probably get 5 5-star reviews, and then we'll open it to 10. And if those 10 love it as much as they do, we'll keep going. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to shut it down.
Yeah. And do something else, right? Like that's the beauty of being a human.
Exactly. That's my
That's awesome.
passion.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Nurse 101. And you said it's on TeachRN is where we can find that at?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
awesome.
I'm pretty much just on LinkedIn. You can find Matt Harless, and then in my bio, there's a link to attach to it. So
All right, cool. Yeah. Is it open for like any nurse? Is it specifically for like nurses that have graduated, or can even nursing students get in on it?
I like nursing students. I like new graduates. But
Okay.
honestly, if you've been a nurse and you are struggling, it doesn't matter how long you've been in nurse. I will teach you things I guarantee you were not taught.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I love your passion and mission. And thank you for bringing your light and your innovative ideas into this world. And so excited to feature you in the School of Modern Nursing as well and continue this collaboration. You're amazing. And I love nerding out with you. So thanks, Matt, for your time. I
Yes, thank you
appreciate it.
so much.
Of course. Well, until we nerd out next time, everybody that's listening or watching, always know that with one breath, you can always begin again and know that your energy does affect others, right? So that's kind of briefly a little bit about what we talked about. But if you want to learn more, you can follow Matt and I on LinkedIn. And obviously, I'll put in the description down below all the goodness where you can find Matt and access his Nurse 101 course. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Matt, for being on here. I appreciate you.
Thank you again. Loved it.
All right. Bye. Thank you. Hold on. Let me stop it here and then we'll. Okay. I have a call coming up, but I just wanted to say I do want to feature you on the School of Modern Nursing website.